Solo's Sports Day. It was the school sports day for the kids in Solo's household. Both the son and the daughter would participate. Mum and Dad were naturally as excited as the kids for the big day. Not that they expected much. Neither one of their children had shown any natural sporting ability over the years. "I suppose relying on one of them to become a major sports star and to pay for our retirement is off the table," Dad had once said to Mum. Mum's response was that she had been a track and field star in school, so the failure for their children to do well at sports must come from Dad's side of the family. Dad did his usual harumph noise when his wife had got the better of him and decided he was going to play some golf, something he was actually quite good at. Their conversation had taken place a few months before the sports day, and their children's chances of winning any events had not improved. "All we can do is encourage them to have fun and remind them that winning isn't everything if they lose," Mum had said to Dad over breakfast. Solo, in his usual spot under the kitchen table, was troubled by this discussion of the children in his household losing at something. Solo had once helped Dad at golf. Perhaps he could help the kids, too. The family had decided to take Solo along with them, as the sports event would last all day, and the idea of leaving Solo at home for an entire day was just too scary to contemplate. Besides, Mum and Dad had already picked out a great place to sit. There was a nice grassy hill just at the start of the first turn of the track, where they planned to lay down a blanket and enjoy a picnic as they watched their kids. This was also a perfect place for Solo. Better than leaving him at home, that much they were certain about. As the family left the SUV, the kids ran off to join their teammates. Mum, Dad, and Solo walked to claim their place on the small hill. Solo was really happy. He wasn't exactly sure what this sports day thing was all about, but he did know he was with his family to watch the kids do something. Whatever it was the kids were supposed to do, Solo was ready to help by cheering them on. Mum, Dad, and Solo found the perfect spot on the small grassy hill. They could see all the way to the start and finish lines. They laid out the blanket and placed some containers of food and drink on the blanket. Dad decided to take a quick nap before the start of the events. Solo was too excited to follow Dad's example. He was interested in everything that was going on. Plus, the atmosphere started to get more intense the closer to start time, and more spectators showed up. Soon all the stands and the grassy hill were full of people there to cheer on their favorite athlete. Solo remained sitting on his haunches, fascinated by all that was happening, and hoping that soon he would understand what a sports day really was. He didn't have long to wait. There was a crack of a starting pistol, and a group of runners ran a quick dash down to the finish line, directly in front of the main stands. They didn't even make it to the first corner. "Well, that was disappointing," thought Solo. It seemed to Solo that the race was over almost before it even started. It was that short. More runners had set themselves ready at the start line of the track. Solo yawned. If all the races were going to be as short as the one he's just seen, then this was going to be a very long day indeed. Besides, he wanted to cheer on his family, and as far as he could tell, the children in his household weren't running yet. Solo decided to take a nap, lay down on the grass, and closed his eyes. Suddenly there was the crack of a starting pistol, and Solo's eyes shot open as he was startled out of his slumber. The runners started off. Down to the first turn they went, neck and neck, round the back turn, right in front of Mum, Dad, and Solo, then up the back straight, round the last 2 turns, and across the finish line in front of a loud, cheering crowd. "Now this is more like it," thought Solo. "A real race." As he watched the winner being congratulated, Solo wondered to himself what it would be like to run in front of a crowd. "Such fun," he thought, "to be crowned the winner of a real race." Of course, this would never happen. Solo was a fast dog since he was still quite young, but he had never raced against another dog. The closest he had come to racing another dog was when he played with Sonny the poodle, his next-door neighbor, and even he had to admit that Sonny seemed to be much faster than he was. Once Solo had seen a greyhound race on television. While he had yet to meet a greyhound, he knew, even by simply watching them on TV, that just about any greyhound could beat him. That they needed to chase a fake rabbit in order to run, however, made no sense. Surely the best way to motivate any dog to run was to put a fake squirrel on the track. Soon it was the son's turn to run. He was to be in the longest race of the day. The race would require not 1 turn around the track, but 3. As the runners lined up, Mum, Dad, and Solo moved down to the small wire fence that separated the track from the viewing area, hoping that the son could see and hear them cheering him on. Once more there was a loud crack from the starting pistol, and the runners were off. Solo and his family watched as the runners, all bunched together, rounded the first turn, directly in front of where they were standing. Solo could see the son was right in the middle of the group. Solo barked encouragingly. Go on," he was saying. Solo was disappointed that the son didn't turn to look at Solo or Mum and Dad. Down the back straight they went, the runners all bunched together in a small group, no one pulling ahead or even starting to get tired. As they came down by Mum, Dad, and Solo for a second time, it seemed any one of them could be the winner. Then, as they went up the back straight, a few runners suddenly pulled away, separating from the rest of the pack. Solo was too far away to see who it was, but he was certainly hoping it was a certain family member. Solo was excited. He moved forward and, pushing up, rested his front paws on the small wire fence, just so he could be that much closer to the action. He watched in anticipation as the runners came by for a final time, and he saw the son was now in third place, attempting to keep up with the two front runners as they pulled away. That was how the race ended, with the son coming in third. Mum and Dad were very proud of their son for doing so well and congratulated him when he came over to where they were by the fence. The son rubbed Solo's head. He was very pleased with himself, and while he didn't win, this was the best race he had ever run. As he went back to join his teammates, his head was held high and he had a big smile on his face. Next up was the final race of the day, the hurdles. Solo had no idea what this meant, except that on the track had been placed what looked like a series of small fences. He gathered that the runners, which included the daughter, were supposed to jump over these as they went round the track. All this seemed rather silly to Solo. Who would want to deliberately jump over a small fence when there was plenty of room to go around? As Solo was pondering this, the starting pistol was fired, and the runners were off. As they got to their first hurdles, each jumped, legs stretched out in each direction as they magically landed and kept running as if nothing had happened. Solo, his front paws still resting on the fence, looked on in amazement. He had never seen anything like it before. But while he was impressed with the fact the various runners could run, jump, land, and run again without slowing down, he wasn't impressed with the feat of actually jumping the funny little fence thingies in the first place. But to Solo, they seemed remarkably low. In fact, the fence he was resting his paws on was higher, and Solo knew that he could jump that with ease. So how hard could it be to jump one of those little fences on the track? The daughter was doing remarkably well. She was in second place, not far behind the leader. Mum and Dad cheered for their daughter to keep running as fast as she could. Caught up in all the excitement, Solo started to bark at the top of his lungs. He was doing what he could to encourage the girl to win. But she just couldn't seem to close the gap between her and the leader. Solo felt helpless. He knew he was too far away for all his barking to make any difference. He needed to be closer. Just then, he had a brilliant idea. Solo remembered the fake rabbit pulled in front of the running greyhounds on television. Solo knew what he had to do. He would be the rabbit. And if he ran in front of the daughter, then that should, he hoped, encourage her to run just that little bit faster and hopefully win the race. Without thinking, when did Solo think through some of his plans? He suddenly leapt over the small wire fence he had been leaning on and ran out toward the track as fast as he could. The yells of Mum and Dad calling, "Solo, come back at once!" soon disappeared into the background. Solo was nowhere near as fast as a greyhound, but when the need arose, Solo could indeed run fast for a few moments, and that's exactly what Solo did. He ran flat out down the middle of the track and soon caught up with the runners. Solo was, for a moment, a small blur of white fur, moving so fast that it took the crowd a few moments to even realize that a large white dog was now running neck and neck with the two front runners. The three of them, Solo, the daughter, and the other girl, turned down the final straight towards the finish line. In front of them were only 2 more hurdles each. Solo had planned to go around these, but caught up in the moment as he was, he decided to join in and leapt over the second-to-last hurdle with ease. He was so fast and so distracted by his clearing the hurdle in a single bound that he quite forgot why he was there in the first place. So instead of running beside the daughter and barking encouragement, he was now in the lead. Solo was going to win. All that remained between him and victory was the one last hurdle. He could see and hear the crowd going wild, pointing and yelling Solo to victory. The crowd had indeed now noticed Solo, and laughing and yelling were wondering how this big white dog could move so fast, and where on earth it had come from. The daughter, of course, had noticed Solo too. Indeed, Solo's plan of acting as a rabbit to encourage her to run faster had worked, but not for the reasons he had thought. She had increased her speed so as to catch Solo and bring him back to her parents. She was also extremely embarrassed by the appearance of the family dog right in front of her teammates and school. That Solo, she thought as she raced to try and catch him. But it was no good. Solo was too fast, pounding away down the track, now only focused on one thing: winning. The last hurdle was suddenly there in front of him. Pushing with his back legs, he leapt as gracefully as a large white dog can leap, clearing the hurdle. Before he knew it, he had crossed the finish line, the crowd of onlookers cheering wildly. The daughter came next, just beating the other girl by a matter of inches. She stopped as soon as she crossed the line, bent over in an effort to catch her breath. She looked up at the timing clock. This was the fastest race she had ever run. Solo, meanwhile, equally exhausted, decided to lay down on the cool grass in the middle of the field, his large red tongue hanging out as he panted heavily. Just then, Mum and Dad came up to him. He smiled at them knowingly. He didn't know if the daughter had won, but he surely did know he had done his part. It turned out that many people at the track had taken videos of Solo running down the track, leaping over the hurdles and crossing the line. Naturally, these videos ended up on the internet. The local newspaper had sent a photographer to document the day's activities. Bored as he was by the kids' events, the editor had published a photo of Solo crossing the finish line on their front page. Once more the family looked at the front page of their local newspaper, where yet again a picture of Solo was plastered, this time crossing the finish line ahead of everyone else. But Solo wasn't who the family was looking at in the photo. If you looked carefully, in the background, just as Solo crossed the line, Mum and Dad could clearly be seen running in an attempt to grab Solo. What's more, their faces had the look of acute embarrassment, arms waving madly, mouths open, seemingly yelling something. While it was impossible to know for sure what was being said, as in the chaos Mum and Dad had forgotten, his family had no doubt that Mum and Dad were yelling, "Solo!"